A woman starts dating a man she met on Tinder. He seems perfect, too perfect. She becomes suspicious and does some digging, only to find out he has stolen someone else's identity. When she confronts him, he becomes aggressive, and she realizes she's been sharing personal details with a stranger who has a hidden, dangerous agenda. It was a chilly autumn evening when I first swiped right on Jason. His profile was impressive. Great job, adventurous hobbies, and a warm, inviting smile. We matched instantly, and our conversations flowed effortlessly. Little did I know, this perfect stranger would soon become the subject of my darkest nightmares. We started chatting on the app, and it didn't take long before we exchanged numbers. He seemed like the whole package, well-traveled, funny, and genuinely interested in me. We had this instant connection that felt so rare, like we'd known each other forever. He told me he worked in finance, loved rock climbing, and had a dog named Max. It all seemed so perfect. After a couple of weeks of texting and late-night phone calls, we decided to meet in person. We picked a cozy little cafe downtown. I remember being so nervous, my heart pounding in my chest as I walked through the door. But the moment I saw him, all my worries melted away. He looked just like his pictures, better even. We hugged, and it felt so natural, like reuniting with an old friend. The date went amazingly well. We talked for hours, and he was so attentive, hanging on to every word I said. He told me about his recent trip to Iceland, showing me stunning pictures of glaciers and waterfalls. I shared my dreams of traveling to Japan someday, and he promised we'd go together. It was all so enchanting. Over the next few weeks, we saw each other almost every other day. He'd surprise me with flowers, send sweet good morning texts, and call just to hear my voice. He seemed like the dream boyfriend, attentive, caring, and so thoughtful. But then, little things started to feel off. One night, we were having dinner at his place. He went to the kitchen to grab dessert, and his phone buzzed on the table. A message popped up from someone named Alex, saying, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow." My heart sank. Who was Alex? Why hadn't he mentioned them before? I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I kept it to myself, hoping it was nothing. But my gut wouldn't let it go. Over the next few days, I started noticing other inconsistencies. He'd mentioned his job at a specific firm, but when I casually brought it up during a conversation, his story didn't quite add up. He seemed flustered, changing the subject quickly. One evening, I decided to do some digging. I looked up the company he claimed to work for and found no trace of him. No LinkedIn profile, no mentions on their website, nothing. It was like he didn't exist. I felt a cold shiver down my spine. Determined to get to the bottom of this, I started searching his name online. After hours of scrolling through social media and obscure websites, I stumbled upon a forum post about a man who sounded eerily similar to Jason. The poster described meeting a charming guy on a dating app, only to find out he was using a stolen identity. My blood ran cold. I confronted Jason the next time we met. We were sitting on his couch, watching a movie, when I paused it and turned to him. "Jason, is there something you're not telling me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked at me, confused. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath and told him everything, how I couldn't find any trace of him online, how his stories didn't add up, and about the forum post. His face changed instantly. The warm, charming smile vanished, replaced by a cold, hard glare. "You've been spying on me?" he snapped. "I had to know the truth," I said, my voice shaking. "Who are you, really?" For a moment he just stared at me, and I felt a flicker of fear. Then he stood up, towering over me. "You have no idea what you're talking about," he said, his voice low and menacing. "You're making a huge mistake." I realized I was in over my head. I grabbed my things and left as quickly as I could. My heart was pounding, and I felt like I was being watched the whole way home. I reported him to the police and the dating app, but without concrete evidence of a crime, there was little they could do. For weeks, I felt like I was being watched, and every unknown number that called sent chills down my spine. I changed my number, moved to a new apartment, and even took a self-defense class. Looking back, I realize how naive I had been, but I also learned valuable lessons about trust and the importance of listening to my instincts. Jason, or whatever his real name was, had shown me that even in the world of modern dating, true monsters can still lurk behind the guise of a perfect match. A man goes on a Tinder date at the woman's apartment. Everything seems normal until she locks him in and reveals she's part of a criminal gang. They demand he transfers all his money to their account and threatens him with violence. He must find a way to escape without provoking them further. The chirp of a new Tinder notification broke the monotony of my afternoon. I glanced at my phone and saw a stunning woman named Julia. Her profile was a mix of vibrant travel photos and a captivating smile. She seemed full of life, someone who could lift my spirits after a long week. We started chatting, and soon enough, our messages turned into long conversations. Julia was funny, smart, and incredibly engaging. After a few days, she suggested we meet for dinner at her apartment. It seemed a little unconventional, but her charm was enough to dispel any doubts. I arrived at Julia's apartment around 7 p.m. It was a decent place in a quiet neighborhood. I remember feeling a bit nervous but excited. She greeted me at the door with that same infectious smile I'd seen in her photos. The apartment was cozy, filled with warm lighting and the smell of something delicious cooking. "Hey Victor, come on in," she said, motioning me inside. "Make yourself at home. Dinner will be ready soon." We chatted easily as she finished preparing the meal. Julia was a great host, making sure I was comfortable and had everything I needed. It felt like we had known each other for ages. Once dinner was ready, we sat down to eat, and the conversation flowed effortlessly. Everything seemed perfect. After dinner, we moved to the living room. Julia poured us some wine, and we continued talking. At one point, she got up to check something in the kitchen. That's when I noticed a door slightly ajar down the hallway. Curiosity got the best of me, and I glanced inside. It was just a storage room, nothing unusual. I shrugged it off, thinking I was being paranoid. Julia came back with a fresh bottle of wine. We toasted and took a few sips, but something felt off. My vision started to blur, and my limbs felt heavy. Panic set in as I realized something was very wrong. I tried to stand up, but my legs gave out. Julia was watching me with a cold, calculating expression that sent chills down my spine. Before I could react, 2 men burst into the room. One of them grabbed me, while the other tied my hands behind my back. "What the hell is this?" I managed to slur, my voice weak. Julia leaned in close, her smile now a twisted sneer. "Welcome to the real world, Victor. We're going to need you to transfer all your money to our account. If you refuse, things will get very unpleasant." I was terrified, but I knew I had to stay calm. I needed to buy time and figure out a way out of this nightmare. They dragged me to the kitchen and forced me to sit at the table. One of the men placed a laptop in front of me and demanded my bank details. "Look, I don't have much," I said, trying to stall. "Maybe we can work something out." "Just do as you're told," the man snarled, shoving the laptop closer. I logged into my bank account, my mind racing. I knew if I transferred the money, they might kill me anyway. I needed a plan, and fast. Then I remembered the vase on the counter, just a few feet away. If I could reach it, maybe I could use it as a weapon. I pretended to be more compliant, typing slowly and asking questions to keep them distracted. As I did, I inched my chair closer to the counter. One of the men grew impatient and leaned in to see the screen. That was my chance. With a sudden burst of energy, I grabbed the vase and swung it at him, knocking him out cold. The other man lunged at me, but I managed to slip out of his grasp and sprinted to the window. I pried it open and climbed out onto the fire escape. He reached for me, but I kicked him away and scrambled down the stairs. My heart was pounding and my breath was ragged, but I didn't stop. I heard them shouting behind me, but I didn't look back. I just kept running, the cold night air stinging my face. I finally reached the street and flagged down a passing car. The driver must have seen the panic in my eyes because he stopped without hesitation. I jumped in and told him to drive, not caring where we went as long as it was far away from that apartment. As we sped away, I glanced back one last time. Julia was standing at the window, watching me with a look of pure hatred. But I was free. I had escaped. I just hoped I never saw her or her gang again. In the end, I went straight to the police and told them everything. They took my statement and assured me they would investigate, but I knew it would be a long and difficult process. The experience left me shaken and wary of meeting new people. I deleted my Tinder account and decided to take a break from dating altogether. Looking back, I realized how close I came to losing everything. It was a harsh lesson, but one I would never forget. I learned to trust my instincts and be more cautious, especially when it came to people I met online. It was a scary world out there, and I had narrowly escaped one of its darkest corners. A woman agrees to go on a second date with her Tinder match at his house. Once she arrives, she finds herself in a house filled with hidden cameras and disturbing paraphernalia. She realizes she's not his first victim and must find a way to escape before he returns. I never imagined I'd be sharing a story like this, but it's important for people to know that not everyone is who they seem. My name is Natalie, and this is the story of my second date with Steven. A night that started with excitement and ended in terror. Steven and I met on Tinder. He was charming, good-looking, and seemed genuinely interested in me. Our first date was perfect. We went to this cozy little cafe, talked for hours, and laughed about the most random things. I felt an immediate connection, something I hadn't felt in a long time. So when he invited me to his house for dinner on our second date, I didn't think twice about it. His place was out in the suburbs, a bit secluded but nothing too unusual. I remember driving up to his house, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. The house looked normal, well-kept lawn, a welcoming porch, the works. As I walked up to the door, I told myself this was going to be another perfect night. Steven greeted me at the door with that same warm smile. We hugged, and he led me inside. The house was cozy and nicely decorated, but there were a few odd things I noticed right away. For one, there were way too many security cameras. I mean, I get that some people are cautious, but this felt a bit over the top. When I asked him about it, he just shrugged and said he liked to feel secure. We settled in the living room with a glass of wine, chatting and laughing just like our first date. But as the evening went on, I started to feel this uneasy vibe. It was nothing I could put my finger on, just little things that didn't sit right with me. He was charming and attentive, but there was something almost too perfect about it. At one point, he excused himself to the bathroom, leaving me alone in the living room. My curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to take a little look around. I wandered into the hallway and noticed a door slightly ajar. It led to a room that seemed different from the rest of the house. When I peeked inside, my blood ran cold. The room was filled with hidden cameras, recording equipment, and shelves lined with personal items, lipsticks, hairbrushes, jewelry. It looked like a shrine, and I realized with a sickening feeling that these items belonged to other women. My mind raced. How many women had he lured here? What had happened to them? Panic surged through me. I had to get out of there. I quietly slipped back into the living room, trying to act normal as Steven returned. I forced a smile and pretended nothing was wrong, my heart pounding in my chest. Every second felt like an eternity as I planned my escape. After a few more minutes of small talk, I made up an excuse about needing to get something from my car. Stephen's expression darkened for a split second, but he quickly masked it with a smile. He offered to get it for me, but I insisted I could manage. As soon as I stepped outside, I broke into a run, not looking back. I reached my car, fumbling with the keys in my panic. That's when I heard the front door slam open and Stephen's footsteps behind me. I managed to get in the car and lock the doors just as he reached me. He pounded on the window, his charming facade completely gone, replaced by a look of pure rage. I started the engine and floored it, my hands shaking so badly I could barely steer. I drove straight to the nearest police station where I told them everything. They took me seriously, thank God, and went to investigate. Stephen was arrested, and it turned out he had a history of stalking and violence. The items in that room? They belonged to women who had gone missing over the past few years. I still have nightmares about that night, but I'm grateful to be alive. I share my story to remind everyone to trust their instincts and be cautious, even when everything seems perfect. You never really know who you're dealing with